As I stepped onto the crisp gravel path leading to my new home, the anticipation of starting a fresh chapter in my life was palpable. The small town's peaceful aura was a stark contrast to the bustling city I had left behind, and the promise of quiet evenings and serene mornings was tantalizingly close. I had not even crossed the threshold when Amanda, my spirited and ever-cheerful mother-in-law, approached me with a large, elegantly wrapped package in her arms. "Look at this, isn't it a fantastic clock?" Amanda exclaimed with an infectious enthusiasm. "It's a housewarming gift. Please, accept it." Her voice, filled with warmth and excitement, made me smile, despite the chaos of moving. Eager to see what lay beneath the festive wrapping, I carefully took the gift from her. Amanda's eyes sparkled with delight as I unwrapped the package. Inside was a beautiful wooden clock, large enough to demand its own space on a wall. The craftsmanship was exquisite, with intricate details that spoke of skilled hands and careful attention. Atop the dial was a small birdhouse, charming in its simplicity. "I'm sure at certain times, pigeons or small birds will pop out of it," Amanda continued, her smile widening as she watched my reaction. I thanked her, genuinely touched by her thoughtfulness. The clock was not just a gift, it was a symbol of new beginnings, of time that would be spent creating memories in this new home. However, as I shifted the clock in my hands to get a better look, a glint of something unusual caught my eye. It was a fleeting sparkle from the corner of my vision, subtle yet unmistakably out of place. The light drew my gaze toward it, and as I stared, a sudden, inexplicable wave of anger surged within me. The emotion was overpowering, irrational, and before I could comprehend the reason behind it, I found myself acting on a violent impulse. With both hands, I swung the beautiful clock and smashed it against a garden stone. The sound of shattering wood echoed through the air, a stark, jarring noise that seemed to freeze time itself. I stood there, panting, my heart racing, as the realization of what I had done began to sink in. Amanda, my mother-in-law, stood a few feet away, her face a mask of shock and confusion. The smile had vanished, replaced by a look of hurt and disbelief. "My name is Jennifer," and at that moment, standing in front of the shattered remains of a gift given in love, I felt a deep sense of shame wash over me. "I'm 30 years old, working in administrative tasks at a factory, a job that requires precision and calm, qualities I thought I possessed. My father, who also works in manufacturing, taught me from a young age that this industry isn't just about the physical creation of goods, but also about the people who manage and support the processes behind the scenes. Influenced by his dedication, I've always been drawn to roles that support the main action, content to be in the background, ensuring everything runs smoothly. Throughout my life, whether managing props during school plays or overseeing the baseball team's equipment during club activities, I found fulfillment in the shadows, in the quiet acknowledgement of a job well done. This background role never diminished my sense of contribution. The occasional "thank you" was enough to remind me that my efforts were valued. Driven by a deep admiration for my father and a desire to follow in his footsteps, I aimed for an administrative position right out of school. However, the path wasn't straightforward. My initial attempts to secure a position at a factory were unsuccessful, as these roles often went to candidates with more specialized knowledge or experience. My first job was in a retail store, far removed from the industrial environment I yearned for. But I didn't give up on my dream. While working, I dedicated myself to learning about machinery and enhancing my administrative skills, aiming for the opportunity to make a significant change. After 3 years, my persistence paid off. I landed a job at the factory of my choice, where I now manage the vital tasks that keep the gears turning smoothly behind the scenes. It was here, in this environment of precision and structure, that I met Daniel, the man who would become my husband. The day Daniel proposed was one of those rare, picture-perfect moments that you read about in novels or see in movies. Daniel, always the soul of kindness and buoyancy, had managed to plan the perfect surprise to wrap up our unforgettable trip to Hawaii. I had always dreamed of visiting the islands, drawn by their lush landscapes and serene beaches, so the trip itself was a dream come true. But it was Daniel's proposal on our last evening there that truly marked the pinnacle of our romantic getaway. It had been a beautiful day, and we decided to celebrate our last night with a fancy dinner at the hotel's renowned restaurant. The full-course meal was exquisite, and by the time we finished our dessert, I was content and more than a little full. Then, unexpectedly, Daniel signaled for the waiter, and to my amazement, another dessert appeared, this time a beautifully decorated cake. Confused but intrigued, I couldn't help but cover my mouth in surprise when I read the icing on the cake. "Will you marry me?" At that moment, Daniel got down on one knee, his smile wide and hopeful as he opened a small box to reveal a sparkling diamond ring. "Will you marry me?" he asked, his voice steady but filled with emotion. The intensity of the moment overwhelmed me. Tears streamed down my face as I nodded, unable to find my voice to speak. The surrounding tables burst into applause, and although it was a bit embarrassing, it was undoubtedly a moment I would never forget. Despite the joy and the perfect proposal, a small concern lingered in my mind, a shadow amid the brightness of our engagement. It was during a visit to Daniel's house to announce our engagement that this concern had surfaced. Amanda, Daniel's mother, had always been a strong and outspoken figure. She had greeted us warmly enough, but her words soon took a turn that left me uneasy. "I've heard about you. You're a very hardworking and sincere young woman. By the way, how old are you, Jennifer?" she asked casually. When I replied that I would soon be 28, her response was less than enthusiastic. "What? I hope everything is fine with having grandchildren." "I was expecting a younger bride," she remarked, almost thoughtlessly. Daniel, bless him, immediately came to my defense. "Mom, stop talking about that. We are about to get married, don't be rude," he interjected firmly, trying to brush off his mother's comments. But Amanda's expression showed she wasn't fully convinced, and the topic of children and grandchildren seemed to weigh heavily on her mind. I wanted children, too, and hoped to conceive as soon as possible after we were married. However, Amanda's reaction added an unexpected pressure to our plans. It was a tension I hadn't anticipated, and it left me with mixed feelings amidst our celebratory moments. The joy of our engagement was undeniable, but Amanda's words lingered, a reminder that not all aspects of our future together would be as simple as a fairy tale proposal. Living with Daniel's parents was initially a practical decision. The proximity to my workplace made it difficult to refuse, but I hadn't anticipated the emotional toll it would take. Amanda, always vocal and direct, grew more insistent about her desire for grandchildren as soon as we moved in. Her comments ranged from harmless musings about her friends' adorable grandchildren to more intrusive remarks about our personal efforts to conceive. "Jennifer, are you measuring your body temperature properly? You know, there are methods like the something-something method. You really have to think about making babies," she would say, not shying away from inserting herself into the most private aspects of our lives. Her constant focus on our reproductive efforts started to feel overwhelming, especially as weeks turned into months, with no success. The pressure from Amanda only intensified my own concerns about becoming pregnant, which I was finding more challenging than expected. Eventually, after several stressful months of trying without any signs of pregnancy, Daniel and I decided to seek medical advice. The doctor's diagnosis was a heavy blow. He explained that my uterus had a slightly complex shape which could be making it difficult for an embryo to implant. Fearful, I asked him directly, "Does that mean I can't get pregnant?" His response was cautious yet disheartening. "Scientifically, it's not completely impossible," he began. "However, there are no known cases of pregnancy in this situation in the United States." Hearing this, the room seemed to spin, and I couldn't help but break down in tears. Daniel, standing by my side, tried to offer words of comfort, assuring me that we would face this together. But his reassurances did little to alleviate the deep sense of failure that had begun to seep into my bones. I felt as though I was failing not just as a wife, but as a woman. Despite Daniel's attempts to console me, his struggle to find the right words only added to my distress. This revelation and the ongoing stress began to affect not just my emotional state but also my daily life. I found it increasingly difficult to focus on my job and household responsibilities. My interactions with Amanda, who was usually forthright and assertive, became even more strained. She noticed the change in my demeanor and would often ask if everything was all right, sensing the shift in the atmosphere at home. One evening, the tension reached a breaking point. Amanda, unable to contain her frustration, blurted out, "I knew it. I should never have let you marry her. I had a bad feeling about this from the start. I checked if grandchildren would be possible, didn't I?" Her words, sharp and filled with accusation, hung heavily in the air. Daniel, who had been relatively calm until then, finally lost his patience. "Mom, that's no way to talk. Blaming Jennifer won't solve anything." "It's not her fault," he retorted, his voice firm and protective. The conflict was painful, but it was also a crucial moment for us. It forced us to confront not only the challenges of our situation, but also the dynamics within our new family. This confrontation, although harsh, was a necessary step in addressing the unspoken tensions and beginning to work through them as a family. The situation at Daniel's parents' house had become untenable. The tension that had been building over time had finally erupted into open conflict, leaving Daniel and me in a state of emotional turmoil. Amanda's outburst that day was the last straw. As she stormed off to her room, Daniel tried to console me, his words gentle yet tinged with sadness. "Don't worry about it, Jennifer. You don't have to mind her," he said, but his voice betrayed his concern. The room felt heavier, suffused with a sense of injustice and pain that no words could alleviate. Later that evening, as we sat quietly together, trying to find solace in each other's presence, I broached a subject that had been haunting me. "Daniel, actually I've been thinking about this too." I began hesitantly, the words catching in my throat. "What do you mean?" Daniel asked, his brow furrowing in concern. I swallowed hard, my heart aching with the thought of the words that were about to leave my lips. "I think it's too painful for you to stay with me. You want to have children, right? But you can't have them with me. I think it would be better for us to break up." Daniel looked stunned, his eyes widening in disbelief. "But Jen," he said firmly, grasping my hands in his, "I married you because I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Jennifer, whether we can have children or not. As long as we can live together, that's all that matters to me. Please, stop thinking about breaking up just because we can't have children." Tears welled up in my eyes at his words. Daniel's unwavering commitment in the face of such adversity was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. I knew how much a family meant to him, yet here he was, standing by me, choosing our love over the possibility of having children naturally. In the days that followed, the strain of living under the same roof as Amanda grew. While my father-in-law and Daniel would protect me when present, Amanda's demeanor would sharply change in their absence, turning colder and more critical. I discussed this with Daniel daily, my anxiety growing about potentially exacerbating the situation if Amanda thought I was complaining about her to Daniel. Despite our best efforts, the atmosphere at home continued to deteriorate. Amanda's persistent hostility showed no signs of abating, affecting both Daniel and me deeply. Eventually, unable to bear the constant tension, Daniel confronted his mother again. "We have our own circumstances in this marriage. What do you want from Jennifer? Isn't it enough that she lives here with us? Stop being so mean to her," he implored, his voice filled with frustration. Amanda, however, was unyielding. "Quiet. I will not accept a daughter-in-law who can't give me grandchildren," she retorted vehemently. Her words cut through the air, leaving a silence that was both chilling and final. "I can't live with you anymore. This is not fair to Jennifer. We're moving out," Daniel declared firmly, his decision resolute. Taking action, we began searching for a new place to call our own. Initially, we looked for rentals that could accommodate us immediately, but nothing felt right, nothing met our expectations. After much discussion, considering our living expenses and future plans, we agreed that building a new house would be a better option. It was a significant decision, but one that promised a new beginning, a chance to create a home where love and respect could flourish, free from the oppressive atmosphere that had overshadowed our recent days. The sight of Amanda at our new front door, only a week after we had moved to escape the tension and constant criticism, was like a ghost from a past I was desperately trying to leave behind. There she stood, bags in hand, with an apologetic air that was so out of character it took me a moment to process. My father-in-law, who appeared equally uneasy, accompanied her. Despite the knot of apprehension in my stomach, I couldn't help but be curious about this sudden change in demeanor. "I'm sorry for making you feel uncomfortable because of me," Amanda said, her voice unusually humble. I was taken aback, my eyes darting to Daniel, who shared my disbelief. This was not the Amanda we knew. Her usual forthrightness was replaced by a meekness that didn't quite fit. She didn't attempt to step past the threshold. Instead, she extended a large package toward me. "This is a housewarming gift. Hang it in your bedroom or something," she explained, adding that the salesperson had mentioned it was good feng shui to place such an item in the bedroom. I hesitated, then took the package, almost mechanically thanking her. But as I did so, I noticed Amanda wouldn't meet my gaze. She was already turning, tugging my father-in-law back down the path. "Well then, we're heading back. You two take care and live well together," she called over her shoulder. "Wait, you just got here. Are you leaving already?" Daniel called out, a hint of confusion in his voice. "I'm sorry, son. This is Amanda's way of making amends. She didn't want to intrude inside your house. We just came to give you this gift," my father-in-law explained with an apologetic smile, while Amanda briskly pulled him away. Their departure left a strange silence hanging in the air. Amanda's submissive attitude, so contrary to her usual assertiveness, left me feeling unexpectedly remorseful. I sensed my father-in-law's reluctance to press the issue further, respecting his wife's apparent attempt at reconciliation. Encouraged by Daniel's excited voice, I decided to open the package right there on our front porch. Inside was a beautifully crafted wooden wall clock, adorned with a small birdhouse-like ornament. It was designed like a cuckoo clock, quaint and charming in appearance. However, as I handled the clock, a detail caught my attention, igniting a spark of suspicion. Without a word, driven by a sudden impulse, I lifted the clock high with both hands and smashed it onto a garden stone nearby. The sound of shattering wood sliced through the quiet afternoon, and as the pieces scattered across the ground, I heard a gasp. Turning, I saw Amanda's face, her expression shifting from stunned disbelief to something darker. The moment was surreal, a mix of liberation and regret, catharsis mingled with a pang of guilt for the destruction of what might have been a genuine olive branch, or perhaps, another manipulative ploy. As the dust settled, Daniel and I stood in the wreckage of broken time, the air heavy with the weight of broken things and perhaps, the first step towards truly setting boundaries that Amanda might finally respect. The quiet of the moment was pierced by Daniel's sharp, incredulous tone, his eyes darting between the broken pieces of the clock and the device I had retrieved from its wreckage. "What are you doing? Mom has reflected on her actions and even gave us a gift, and you're acting like this?" He was visibly upset, disbelief etched across his face. "Apologize to Mom now." Amanda, my mother-in-law, stood frozen, her hand covering her mouth, muttering almost inaudibly, "How could you?" My father-in-law's expression mirrored hers, his mouth agape, shock rendering him momentarily speechless. Taking deep breaths to calm the turmoil inside me, I crouched down by the remnants of the clock, my fingers closing around the crucial evidence that had driven me to act so impulsively. Standing up, I held out the small, sophisticated parts for Daniel to see. "Can you still say that after seeing this?" I asked, my voice steady despite the shaking of my hands. Daniel took the parts from me, confusion turning to anger as he pieced together the reality of the situation. "What is this? Why is this here?" he demanded, his fist clenching as he stared at the covert devices, a camera lens and a voice recognition module, hidden within what was supposed to be an innocuous household item. Amanda's previous attitude, the haste with which she had handed over the gift, suddenly took on a sinister cast. She had seemed almost too eager to be rid of it, her actions more those of someone offloading a burden than offering a reconciliation. "Amanda, do you know what this is?" I asked, holding up the camera and the microphone for her to see. "I have no idea," she replied, shaking her head, her complexion draining to a pale shade that belied her words. Daniel, still holding the devices, added, "It's part of a camera and a voice recognition device." The words hung heavily between us, the implication clear and damning. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my father-in-law, his initial shock evolving into a dawning realization of the gravity of the situation. When I touched the birdhouse, I felt suspicious because the door wouldn't move at all. I continued, my voice firm. "I thought it was just a decoration, but then I saw a small round black hole in the center. When the sunlight hit it, I noticed something glittering inside and realized it was a camera lens." Amanda, cornered by the revelation, could only muster a nervous glance around, clearly disturbed by the turn of events. My father-in-law, the weight of the situation settling upon him, turned to his wife with a deep sigh. "Is this true? You went to such lengths, Mom? You knew about this, right?" The implications were horrifying. If we had hung the clock in our bedroom as intended, Amanda would have had unfettered access to the footage and audio from one of the most private spaces in our home. "Why would you give us something like this?" my father-in-law asked, his voice a mix of anger and disbelief. The room was thick with tension, each of us grappling with the betrayal and its implications. Daniel, trembling with rage, and Amanda, looking around nervously, clearly disturbed by the exposure of her actions, were caught in a moment that would inevitably change our family dynamics forever. "Which my mother stormed out and hasn't been back since," my father-in-law continued, his voice tinged with sadness and exhaustion. "I just don't know what's going to happen now. She's staying with a friend, and I'm here trying to sort through everything. I'm so sorry you both had to endure that, especially Jennifer." His apology, while heartfelt and touching, deepened the confusion and hurt that had taken root within me. "No, Dad, are you okay after all that?" Daniel spoke again, his concern for his father evident in his voice. The situation had clearly taken a toll on him as well, and despite the anger and betrayal, his worry for his parents remained. I listened quietly, my thoughts swirling. The events of the past few days had left a mark, and while I felt relieved to be away from Amanda's toxic behavior, I worried about the strain on Daniel's relationship with his parents. The breach seemed irreparable, and the family dynamics had shifted in ways that would be challenging to navigate in the future. "We had a big fight after that," my father-in-law explained. "I don't know if she'll come back or if we can even go back to how things were. But right now, I think it's best if we give each other some space." His words, filled with a mixture of pain and pragmatism, resonated with me. The need for space felt right, necessary even, as everyone involved needed time to process and heal from the revelations and accusations that had been hurled so carelessly. After the call, Daniel turned to me, his expression somber. "I'm sorry my mom said some really terrible things." "It's not your fault, Jennifer," he reassured me, his voice gentle yet firm, reminding me of the strength of our bond, unaffected by the external chaos. His support was a balm, yet the wound was deep. The way Amanda had invaded our privacy and the hurtful things she had said could not be easily forgotten or forgiven. I pondered the future, how we could possibly maintain any relationship with Amanda after such betrayal. The days that followed were filled with a quiet tension, a mix of relief and unresolved issues hanging in the air. I found myself reflecting on my relationship with Amanda and my father-in-law, wondering if there could ever be a path to reconciliation or if the breach was too wide to bridge. Despite my anger and hurt, I couldn't shake my concern for my father-in-law, who was caught in the middle of a situation he neither expected nor deserved. His role in the aftermath would be crucial, and his well-being remained a priority for both Daniel and me. As I contemplated these tangled threads of relationships, family, and trust, I realized that the path forward would require patience, understanding, and perhaps, in time, forgiveness. But for now, the priority was healing and finding stability in the love and support Daniel and I shared, away from the storm that had momentarily upended our lives. As soon as Daniel ended the call, the gravity of his father's words sank in, leaving a somber mood hanging between us. The revelation that Amanda's malicious behavior extended beyond our personal confines and into the community was unsettling, to say the least. It wasn't just an isolated issue, It was a pattern of toxicity that had affected numerous lives. Daniel, still processing the shock, looked at me with a mixture of concern and resolve. "Can you believe this? She's been hurting people all over the neighborhood," he said, his voice filled with disbelief and anger. Before we could further discuss his father's decision to divorce and move out, a sudden knock at the door jolted us. My heart skipped a beat, half expecting it to be Amanda, ready to unleash a new wave of chaos. But as Daniel cautiously opened the door, it was not Amanda who stood there, but a man with a somewhat apologetic look on his face, holding several bags. "Hello, I'm really sorry to bother you," the man began, shifting uncomfortably on his feet. "I'm George, a friend of your father-in-law. He asked me to drop these off. He thought it might be safer if Amanda didn't know where he's moving to, just yet." The bags, it turned out, contained some of Amanda's belongings that my father-in-law had collected as he prepared for her departure from their home. Daniel invited George in, and we both listened as he explained a bit more about the situation. "Your father-in-law is really torn up about all of this. He's been apologizing to everyone he can think of in the neighborhood. He didn't realize how many people Amanda had hurt until recently," George shared, his tone sympathetic but worried. As George left, Daniel and I discussed the next steps. The potential of Amanda showing up at our doorstep now that she had been kicked out was real and alarming. Daniel was firm, his earlier shock turning into a protective determination. "We'll handle it if she comes here," he reassured me, though I could tell he was still processing everything his father had said. The rest of the day passed in a blur of anxious anticipation. Every car that passed by, every sound at the door, made me tense. But Amanda did not appear. Instead, we spent the time planning our own set of precautions, discussing how to handle any potential confrontation, and reinforcing our resolve to protect our peace at all costs. Late into the evening, as we sat together trying to find some normalcy in our turned upside-down world, Daniel's phone buzzed. It was a message from his father, confirming he had moved into his new place and reiterating his apologies for everything that had transpired. He also mentioned that he would keep his new address confidential for the time being, hoping to prevent any further conflict. "Thank you for understanding, and again, I'm sorry for all this mess," his text read. As I leaned against Daniel, the weight of the day's events settling around us, I felt a mixture of relief and ongoing concern. How would Amanda react to being ostracized by her husband and community? What would our future interactions with her look like? Only time would tell, but for now, Daniel and I were united and ready to face whatever challenges might come our way, holding on to the calm after the storm, however temporary it might be. Once, I recalled, nodding at Daniel's father as he continued. "Yeah, she's staying there now. They've got a good support network for people in her situation, those who need to get back on their feet," he added, a note of concern still evident in his voice despite everything that had transpired. It was hard to reconcile the man before us, thoughtful and considerate, with the woman who had caused so much distress. But it was clear he still cared about what happened to Amanda, even if he could no longer bear to live with her or condone her actions. As we sat in his modest but comfortable new apartment, just a short walk from our own home, it felt like a new chapter was beginning for all of us. Daniel's father had found a place close enough to be part of our lives without the constant tension that Amanda had brought into our household. His willingness to step in if she ever approached us again was reassuring, yet I hoped it would never come to that. Daniel, who had been quiet, spoke up. "It's good you're nearby, Dad. We can keep an eye on each other, you know?" His father smiled, a bit of the weight seeming to lift from his shoulders. "Yes, that's what I was thinking. And don't worry about Amanda. She's in a place where she can be looked after, and I believe that's for the best right now." The conversation shifted to lighter topics, but the shadow of the past lingered. When we finally left, the cool evening air felt like a clean slate, yet the complexity of family dynamics and the pain of recent events weren't so easily left behind. Over the next few weeks, life settled into a new normal. We heard little about Amanda, which was a relief. I often thought about the influence one person could have on the lives of so many, and the resilience needed to rebuild and move forward from such deep hurts. Daniel and I grew closer, our bond strengthened by the trials we had faced together. We focused on building a happy, peaceful life, just the two of us, with the support of his father, a comforting presence nearby. One evening, as we relaxed in our living room, Daniel mentioned, I'm really proud of how we handled everything. It wasn't easy, but I think we've come out stronger for it. I nodded, feeling the truth of his words. Yes, it's been a journey, but I feel like we've managed to find some peace at last. The challenges we had faced with Amanda had tested us, but they also taught us about the boundaries we needed to maintain a healthy relationship, not just with each other, but with everyone in our lives. With Daniel's father close by and Amanda finding her own path forward, it seemed we might finally have a chance at tranquility. We had each other, and that was what mattered most.